Hey guys, Zomfox here. So, this video is being posted exactly 24 hours before USFL's kickoff at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time on April 16th, which we've all been excited for. If you've been on this channel, it's safe to say you've been waiting for it. Well, for those of you who don't know, and this probably is only a few of you, the XFL had already announced a while ago they were going to be coming back in 2023. And in this last week, during the main build-up towards USFL's kickoff, the XFL has tried to keep itself in the news because they've announced two huge things about their league. So I want to talk about what those two things are and talk about the XFL's impact doing this on the USFL and its actual impact on the USFL potentially next year. So I'm going to be intertwining these, but I feel like this is something we have to talk about because even though the XFL has been in the news a while, there hasn't been anything that's this big at a certain time aside from their original agreement, which I believe I've talked about a little bit. So let's just get started with this. So both articles are going to be in the description, the Alumni Academy and the coaches, because those are two big things. So if you want to read the whole things, they're there. So let's get started with the Alumni Academy, which I'm not going to go through the whole article like I usually do, but I'm just going to give you the gist. This is an article from ESPN by Kevin Seifert. So the XFL announces partnership with NFL Academy, Alumni Academy to scout train potential players for the XFL 2023 season. Essentially what this is the NFL Alumni Academy is something that was made very recently. It was made in 2020, and it's a bunch of former players and coaches who kind of run it. And the way it works is they hold practices and, give like workouts and stuff to players who are not employed by the NFL for essentially the NFL teams who need replacements for injuries, for illness, and stuff like that to just go and get. Essentially, it's basically was designed to make it so where when, the pandemic hit and people were having to miss games because of it, probably they just, get them back. That's kind of the biggest reason I believe it was founded. But now with all these injuries and, the people consistently being out, it's a big deal to have it. So they're partnering with the XFL essentially to kind of make players legitimately play both in the NFL and XFL during a given year, by playing only when they need to in the NFL and then going back to the XFL as kind of this broader landscape, and it is an exclusive agreement, which isn't good for the USFL, but at the same time, it's not the most insane thing in the world to me. It is a big deal, but at the same time, this is a very new thing from the NFL. So it's not like this is like an old thing. So I think people are making a bigger deal about this than they should. About it being like, oh, this is like the NFL's G League. It's definitely more of a feeling of an NFL developmental league. But the USFL is kind of doing that without needing to have this agreement. Which is why I think in terms of the USFL, this is not something the USFL needs to worry about. And if you yourself only want the USFL to succeed and not the XFL, because naturally, some people want one to succeed, some want neither, and some want both. If you want just the USFL to succeed, this is not going to affect it at all. Because at the end of the day, the way I view it is it's still 2-2. The XFL has the safety rule thing, and this with the NFL, and the USFL has the NFL Films Agreement and their refs. So, fair. Now, the next thing is the XFL announces their 8 head coaches, and they've made a big deal about how these are, awesome coaches, which one of them is a pretty big deal. Wade Phillips is the biggest deal in my opinion. He's an iconic name. Everyone knows who this guy is. He's going to be a coach. Then you've got Jim Haslett, Bob Stoops, Rod Woodson, Hines Ward, Reggie Barlow, Terrell Buckley, and Anthony Beck. So you have a lot of big name coaches in here because these are guys that I, as someone who does not, as I've said before, follow college football as much as I would like to until recently, these are all guys that I pretty much recognize, except for Anthony Beck and Reggie Barlow, and even then I'm pretty sure I've heard that name before. But all these other guys I've heard before, which is a big deal because these are guys that are very broad to just NFL fans, which is where this league is probably going to attract more people, naturally. But here's my thing on this. the USFL does also, it doesn't have as many big names like this one does, but that's because they're getting more of these proven coaches rather than these players who are trying to become proven coaches. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Hines Ward, Rod Woodson are the two biggest, like, offenders of that, I guess, because it's like, you know them as players, and that's where you know them from, but they are trying to get into coaching, but you just think immediately as a player, if you catch my drift. But essentially, what I'm getting at is they're not even set to a team because the XFL hasn't announced any teams yet. So it's a big deal that they announce these coaches. I do agree that these coaches are a really, really, really good list, which definitely rival the USFL. So if I'm only a fan of the USFL, I would be a little worried because these are definitely guys that can rival them. But at the same time, nothing has been announced. So now I'm just going to talk really quick about what this overall means. I've said from the beginning, and I'll say it again. If the USFL gets through this season and they get to play next year, the XFL is already at a major, near insurmountable deficit. Because the AAF failed and the XFL, when they tried, failed. And I'm talking about in the last few years. No, yes, the XFL would have definitely gotten through that season if the pandemic didn't happen, but it still did fail. And then the original XFL got through 1 year and was done. The original USFL got through 3 seasons. Now, was the third season full of a lot of turmoil? Most definitely. But it still got through 3 seasons. So if the original version was more successful in the USFL than the XFL, and then the XFL's attempt at a rego already failed, if the USFL succeeds, it's set up for success because it's already proven it can last. So that's the biggest deal for me. But and that's kind of where we gotta just wait and see what happens. The XFL announces big things, and I genuinely do believe they announce them now to try and stop some of the hype for the USFL while bringing more attention to themselves. But at the end of the day, we're going to have 10 weeks and then 2 playoff weeks of USFL football with its own documentary series made with NFL films that's going to be going on for a couple months. And this league still hasn't announced their teams and won't play until next year when the USL might already be playing its second year. That's just my 2 thoughts on it. You can talk about what you guys think in the comments down below. This has been ZomFox. If you like this kind of content and you want to be notified as soon as videos get posted, subscribe and hit the bell notification. And remember to have a great night.